Jake Morrison walked through the long hallway that led to the Galactic Senate chamber. His black shoes made soft sounds on the smooth metal floor. The walls around him were covered with strange symbols from hundreds of different worlds. Each symbol told the story of a species that had earned its place in the galaxy. Lisa Grant walked beside him. She carried a thick folder full of papers and notes. Her face looked worried. She had worked with Jake for 3 years now, and she had never seen him this quiet before a big meeting. "Are you ready for this?" Lisa asked. Her voice was soft, but Jake could hear the fear in it. Jake stopped walking and looked at her, as ready as anyone can be when they are about to fight the most powerful empire in the galaxy with nothing but words. The doors to the Senate chamber were huge. They were made of some kind of blue metal that Jake had never seen before. 2 guards stood on each side of the doors. They were tall, thin creatures with 4 arms each. Their skin was green and they had no hair. Jake had met their species before. They were called the Zilani, and they were known for being fair and honest. One of the guards stepped forward. "Ambassador Morrison from Earth, you may enter. The session has already begun." The doors opened with a deep humming sound. Jake and Lisa walked into the biggest room Jake had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that he could not see the top. Around the room, there were hundreds of seats arranged in circles that went up and up like a giant bowl. In each seat sat a different kind of creature. Some looked like giant insects, others looked like walking trees. There were beings made of what looked like living crystal. Some floated in the air without any visible means of support. Jake had studied pictures of all these species, but seeing them in person was still amazing. In the center of the room was a raised platform where speakers could address the Senate. Right now, a creature that looked like a giant jellyfish was speaking. Its voice was translated into English by a small device in Jake's ear. "The Karathi proposal has merit," the jellyfish creature was saying. "Order must be maintained. Some species are clearly more advanced than others." Jake found his seat in a section marked for newer species. The seats here were smaller and placed lower than the others. Even the seating arrangement was designed to make newer species feel less important. Lisa sat in the gallery above, where assistants and observers were allowed. She gave Jake a small wave and opened her folder. On the highest platform in the room sat Emperor Vexthul of the Karathi Empire. He was 8 feet tall with dark red scales covering his body. His eyes were yellow and cold. 2 long fangs stuck out from his upper jaw. He wore robes of deep purple with gold designs that showed his rank. The Emperor was not just tall and scary looking. His empire controlled over 50 star systems. His military had ships that could destroy entire planets. For 2,000 years, the Karathi had been the strongest power in this part of the galaxy. Senator Kreval, an old and respected member from the peaceful Asthan species, stood up. He was short and round with gray fur covering his body. His species was known for being wise and fair. "We will now hear the formal presentation of the Subjugation Accord," Senator Kreval announced. His voice was calm and steady. Emperor Vexthul rose from his seat. When he stood up, every other creature in the room seemed to become smaller. His presence filled the entire chamber. "Honored members of the Galactic Senate," the Emperor began. His voice was deep and powerful. "For too long we have allowed chaos to grow in our galaxy. New species appear every few years. They demand rights they have not earned. They want power they cannot handle." Jake felt his hands tighten into fists. He forced himself to stay calm and listen. "The Subjugation Accord will bring order," the Emperor continued. "Species that have been in space for less than 1,000 years will be classified as junior members. They will pay tribute to their senior members. They will follow the guidance of those who have proven themselves over centuries." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species seemed to agree. Others looked uncomfortable. "This is not punishment," Emperor Vexthul said, his yellow eyes scanning the room. "This is wisdom. A child does not tell an adult what to do. A student does not lecture a teacher. Junior species must learn their place." Jake knew that humans had only been in space for about 200 years. According to this accord, Earth would become a junior member. They would have to pay tribute to older species. They would have no real voice in galactic matters. The Emperor's eyes found Jake in the crowd. Take the humans, for example. They stumbled into space yesterday, yet they think they can sit as equals with species that were building starships, when their world was still covered in ice. Several creatures in the chamber made sounds that Jake's translator told him were laughter. Humans fight among themselves constantly. The Emperor continued. They destroy their own planet. They know nothing of true civilization, yet they dare to send representatives to this sacred chamber. Jake stood up. The movement was sudden and drew attention from across the room. I request permission to address the Senate, Jake said. His voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. Emperor. Vexthul looked down at him with disgust. The junior species may observe and learn. They do not speak in the presence of their betters. The Emperor waved a clawed hand as if brushing away an annoying insect. Sit down, primitive creature. Let your superiors handle matters you cannot understand. Jake remained standing. Every eye in the chamber was now on him. He could feel Lisa's worried gaze from the gallery above. This was the moment that would decide everything. The chamber fell completely silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the air recycling systems. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to fight for his species, with nothing but words. Jake Morrison did not sit down. He walked slowly toward the center of the chamber. Each step echoed in the huge room. Every creature watched him move. Some looked curious. Others looked angry that he dared to break the rules. Senator Kreval stood up quickly. His gray fur was standing on end, which meant he was nervous. Ambassador Morrison, you have not been given permission to speak. Please return to your seat. Jake stopped in the center of the speaking area. He looked up at Emperor Vexthul, then slowly turned to face the hundreds of species representatives around him. I am Jake Morrison, ambassador from Earth, he said. His voice was clear and calm. I represent the human species and I will speak. Emperor Vexthul's yellow eyes blazed with anger. How dare you? Guards, remove this creature from our chamber. But Jake was already talking and his words carried across the room like thunder. You want to know about humans? Jake said. Let me tell you who we are. 200 years ago, we could not even leave our own planet. We fought wars with swords and horses. We died from diseases that we can cure today with simple medicine. Some of the alien representatives leaned forward in their seats. They had never heard a human speak about their own species this way. 50 years ago, we almost destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons, Jake continued. We came so close to ending our own species that we could count the hours until extinction, but we did not die. We learned. We chose to live instead of die. Emperor Vexthul slammed his fist on his platform. The sound was like thunder. Enough. This proves my point. Humans are violent and destructive. Jake looked up at the Emperor and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Yes, we are violent, Jake said. We are destructive. We are also stubborn, angry, and we never give up. Do you know what that means? The chamber was completely silent now. Even the Emperor had stopped shouting. It means that when everyone said we could not reach the stars, we built rockets anyway. When everyone said we could not survive in space, we built space stations anyway. When everyone said we could not travel between star systems, we built faster ships anyway. Jake began walking in a slow circle, looking at different groups of species as he spoke. 20 years ago, the Zilani pirates attacked our colony ships. Everyone said humans would run away. Instead, we fought back with ships that were half the size of theirs. We won. The Zilani representatives in the chamber shifted uncomfortably in their seats. That battle was still remembered throughout the galaxy. 10 years ago, the plague ships from the dead worlds of Sector 7 threatened to spread disease to every living world. Everyone said the problem was too big to solve. Humans flew into those dead systems anyway. We burned out the plague ships with our own hands. 12 humans died to save billions of lives across the galaxy. Lisa Grant watched from the gallery above. She could see that some of the alien representatives were nodding. They remembered these events, but they had never heard them told from the human point of view. Emperor Vexthul stood up again. His massive form cast a shadow over Jake. These are the actions of a young and reckless species. You take risks because you do not understand the consequences. Jake stopped walking and looked directly at the Emperor. You are right. We do not always understand the consequences, but we act anyway when others will not. When the Karathi Empire was asked to help with the plague ships, what did you do? The Emperor's scales darkened with anger. The Karathi do not risk their citizens for other species. Exactly, Jake said. You let others die rather than risk your own comfort. That is the difference between humans and the Karathi Empire. Angry sounds came from the Karathi section of the chamber. Several of the Emperor's advisors were standing and pointing at Jake. You forget yourself, human, Emperor Vexthol roared. You are speaking to beings who ruled the stars when your species lived in caves. Jake nodded. Yes, you are older than us. You have ruled longer than us. You have bigger ships and more worlds. But let me ask you something, Emperor. In all your thousands of years of rule, how many times have you risked everything to help others? The Emperor opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Jake continued. How many times have you chosen to help the weak instead of controlling them? How many times have you chosen to lift others up instead of keeping them down? The chamber was so quiet that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Humans have been in space for 200 years, Jake said. In that time, we have fought 6 wars to protect species that could not protect themselves. We have shared our technology with 40 different worlds. We have never asked for tribute. We have never demanded that others bow to us. Emperor Vexthol's claws scraped against his platform. You speak of helping others, but you cannot even help yourselves. Your own planet is dying from pollution and war. Jake smiled again. This time the smile was sad. You are right. Our world has problems. We make mistakes. We sometimes fail. But when we fail, we try again. When we fall down, we get back up. When everyone tells us something is impossible, we find a way to do it anyway. He looked around the chamber one more time. That is what humans do. We do not accept that things cannot be changed. We do not accept that the weak must always serve the strong. We do not accept your subjugation accord. Emperor Vexthol's roar of anger filled the entire chamber. You will accept it or you will be forced to accept it. The Emperor stood up to his full height. His purple robes flowed around him like storm clouds. His yellow eyes burned with rage. You think your species is special because you are stubborn and reckless, the Emperor said. Let me show you what real power looks like. Jake stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. He was not afraid. He was ready for whatever came next. Emperor Vexthol stepped down from his high platform. His huge feet made heavy sounds on the metal floor. Each step brought him closer to Jake Morrison, who stood alone in the center of the chamber. The other species representatives watched in shock. No one could remember the last time an emperor had left his platform during a Senate session. It was against all protocol. It was against all tradition. Lisa Grant gripped the rail of the gallery above. Her knuckles were white with fear. She wanted to shout for Jake to run, but she knew he would not listen. She had seen that look on his face before. It was the look he got when he had made up his mind about something. Senator Creval stood up, quickly. Your Imperial Majesty, please return to your platform. We can handle this matter through proper channels. The Emperor did not stop walking. No, Senator. This human wants to speak of power and strength. Let him see what real power looks like. Jake did not move as the massive alien approached him. The Emperor was more than twice his height and probably 3 times his weight. His red scales looked like armor. His claws were as long as Jake's fingers. His yellow eyes glowed with anger. When the Emperor reached Jake, he looked down at the human like he was looking at an insect. The smell of sulfur came from the Emperor's breath. His fangs were white and sharp. You stand there talking about human courage, the Emperor said. His voice was quiet now, but somehow more frightening than when he had been shouting. You speak of human strength, but look at you. You are small. You are weak. You are nothing. Jake tilted his head back to look up at the Emperor. Size is not the same as strength, Your Imperial Majesty. The Emperor laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. Is that what you tell yourself? That your weakness is actually strength? Around the chamber, representatives from different species were whispering to each other. Some looked excited. Others looked worried. A few were taking notes or recording everything that happened. Emperor Vexthol placed one of his huge, clawed hands on Jake's shoulder. The claws pressed against Jake's jacket but did not tear the fabric. The weight of the hand made Jake's knees bend slightly, but he did not fall. "Feel that weight, human," the Emperor said. "Feel how easily I could crush you. That is real power. That is what your species refuses to accept." Jake looked at the hand on his shoulder, then back up at the Emperor's face. "Is this supposed to scare me?" The Emperor pressed down harder. Jake's feet spread wider to keep his balance, but he still did not fall or step back. "Your species talks about not accepting the natural order," the Emperor continued. "But the natural order is simple. The strong rule the weak, the large dominate, the small. The old command the young." Jake's breathing was getting harder under the weight of the Emperor's hand, but his voice was still steady. "And what happens when the small refuse to be dominated?" Emperor Vexthol's eyes narrowed. "Then they get crushed." Jake smiled. It was a strange smile to see on someone who was being threatened by a creature that could kill him with one swipe of its claws. "Your Imperial Majesty," Jake said, "you seem very sure of your strength. You seem very confident in your power." "I am the ruler of 50 star systems," the Emperor replied. "I command fleets that could turn your homeworld into dust. Why should I not be confident?" Jake nodded slowly. "You are right. You are bigger than me. You are stronger than me. Your empire is more powerful than my entire species." The Emperor smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. "Finally, you understand. But I have a question for you," Jake continued. "If you are so much stronger than me, if your power is so much greater than mine, then you should be able to prove it easily, right?" The Emperor's smile faded slightly. "What are you talking about, human?" Jake looked around the chamber at all the watching aliens, then back up at the Emperor. "You put your hand on my shoulder to show your strength. But that is not really a test of strength, is it? That is just weight." Senator Kreval was making urgent hand signals from his seat, trying to get Jake to stop talking. But Jake ignored him. "A real test of strength would be different," Jake said. "A real test would be to see if you can keep me from moving you." Emperor Vexthol stared down at Jake. "You want me to what?" "I challenge you to stay exactly where you are," Jake said clearly, so that every creature in the chamber could hear him. "If your strength is so much greater than mine, then you should be able to stay in one spot no matter what I do, right?" The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives were shouting in dozens of different languages. Translators were working overtime to keep up with all the different voices. The Emperor looked confused for a moment. This was not what he had expected. You want to try to move me?" "That is exactly what I want to try," Jake said. "Unless you are not as strong as you claim to be." Emperor Vexthol's face darkened with rage. Being called weak was the worst insult possible for a Karathi. "You think you can move me? You think your puny human strength can budge an emperor of the Karathi?" Jake shrugged, which was difficult with the Emperor's hand still on his shoulder. "There is only one way to find out." The Emperor removed his hand from Jake's shoulder and stepped back slightly. He spread his feet wide and crossed his arms over his chest. His stance was solid and unmovable. "Try it, human," Emperor Vexthol said. "Show this entire Senate how weak your species really is. Try to move me from this spot." Senator Kreval stood up desperately. "Wait, this is highly irregular. There are proper procedures for—" "The challenge has been made and accepted," the Emperor interrupted. "Let the human try. When he fails, everyone will see the truth about his species." Jake looked up at Lisa in the gallery. She was shaking her head, begging him not to do this. But Jake had already made his choice. He took off his diplomatic jacket and handed it to a nearby aide. Then he rolled up his sleeves and looked at the massive Emperor standing before him. "Just so we are clear, Your Imperial Majesty," Jake said, "you are challenging me to move you from where you stand?" "Yes," the Emperor replied confidently. "And when you fail, your species will accept the subjugation accord without question." Jake nodded. "And if I succeed?" The Emperor laughed. "If you succeed, which is impossible, then we will discuss new terms. Jake walked in a slow circle around the Emperor, studying him like a puzzle to be solved. The Emperor remained perfectly still, confident in his superior size and strength. The entire Senate chamber held its breath. This was a moment that would be remembered for generations. Jake stopped circling and faced the Emperor directly. "Ready when you are, Your Imperial Majesty." Jake Morrison stood in front of Emperor Vexithul and studied the massive alien. The Emperor was planted like a tree, his feet wide apart, his arms crossed over his chest. His red scales gleamed under the chamber lights. His yellow eyes were full of confidence and amusement. "Well, human," the Emperor said, "are you going to try? Or are you going to admit that your species is weak?" Jake did not answer right away. He walked around the Emperor one more time, looking at him from every angle. The chamber was completely silent. Every creature was watching. Lisa. Grant clutched the gallery rail so hard her hands hurt. She had seen Jake in dangerous situations before, but never anything like this. If he failed here, it would not just embarrass him. It would doom the entire human race to becoming servants. Senator Creevell was frantically checking his law books. Once a formal challenge was accepted in the Senate chamber, no one could interfere. The challenge had to be completed. Jake stopped, walking, and faced the Emperor. "Your Imperial Majesty, you are very big and very strong, but you have made one mistake." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "What mistake?" "You think that moving you means I have to be stronger than you," Jake said. "But strength is not just about muscle. Sometimes it is about knowing how things work." Before the Emperor could ask what he meant, Jake moved, but he did not try to push the Emperor or lift him. Instead, Jake dropped low and fast. He swept his leg behind the Emperor's ankles in a quick, sharp motion. Emperor Vexthul's eyes went wide with surprise. His legs were suddenly knocked out from under him. For a moment, the massive alien was falling backward, but Jake was ready. As the Emperor fell, Jake spun around and caught him, not in his arms, but across his shoulders in what humans called a fireman's carry. The Emperor was so shocked that he did not resist at first. By the time he realized what had happened, Jake was already standing up with the 8-foot alien draped across his shoulders. The Senate chamber exploded in noise. Creatures were shouting in dozens of languages. Some were cheering. Others were screaming in outrage. Many were simply making sounds of amazement. Emperor Vexthul began to struggle. Put me down this instant." Jake adjusted his grip and began walking. "You challenged me to move you from your spot, Your Imperial Majesty." "You did not. Say I had to put you down first." The Emperor twisted and thrashed, but this only made him look more helpless. Jake kept walking steadily across the Senate floor. His face was red with effort, but his steps were sure and strong. "This is impossible," the Emperor shouted. "I weigh 3 times what you weigh." Jake was breathing hard, but he managed to speak. "Humans learn to lift heavy things early in life. We carry wounded soldiers off battlefields. We rescue people from burning buildings. We do what needs to be done." Lisa Grant watched in amazement as Jake carried the Emperor of the Karathi Empire across the chamber like a sack of grain. She started taking pictures with her recording device. This moment needed to be remembered forever. The Emperor's advisors were on their feet, screaming for the guards to stop this. But Senator Creevell held up his hand. "The challenge was formally accepted," the senator announced. "According to galactic law, it must be completed without interference." Jake was halfway across the chamber now. Sweat was running down his face, but he had not slowed down. The Emperor continued to struggle, but his movements were getting weaker. Being carried upside down was making him dizzy. "You cannot do this to me," the Emperor gasped. "I am the ruler of 50 star systems, and I am a human from Earth," Jake replied. "We do not care how many star systems you rule. We care about what is right." Some of the alien representatives were now standing and cheering. Species that had been afraid to speak against the Karathi Empire were suddenly finding their voices. A representative from the insect-like mantis species clicked excitedly. "The human carries the Emperor like he weighs nothing." A creature that looked like a walking tree made deep rumbling sounds that meant approval in its language. Even some of the floating energy beings were pulsing brighter, which was their way of showing excitement. Jake reached the far side of the chamber. The Emperor had stopped struggling and was just hanging there, breathing heavily. His face was dark red with embarrassment and anger. "There," Jake said. "I have moved you from your spot to this spot. The challenge is complete." He carefully lowered the Emperor to the ground. Emperor Vexthul stumbled as his feet touched the floor. He had to grab onto a nearby rail to keep from falling over. For a moment, the two of them stood facing each other. The Emperor was much taller, but somehow Jake seemed bigger now. "How?" the Emperor whispered. "How did you do that?" Jake was still breathing hard, but he smiled. "Humans have a saying, Your Imperial Majesty. It is not the size of the fighter that matters. It is the size of the fight in the fighter." The Emperor stared at him. You humiliated me in front of the entire galaxy." "No," Jake said. "You humiliated yourself when you thought that being big made you better than everyone else. I just showed everyone that big does not always mean strong." Emperor Vexthul's claws came out. His eyes blazed with fury. "You will pay for this insult, human." He raised his hand to strike Jake. But before he could move, Senate guards surrounded him. By attacking after the challenge was over, the Emperor had broken galactic law. "Your Imperial Majesty," Senator Kreval called out. "You are now the aggressor. Stand down immediately." The Emperor looked around at the guards, then at the hundreds of alien representatives who were all staring at him. Many of them were no longer looking at him with fear or respect. They were looking at him like he was just another bully who had been put in his place. Slowly, the Emperor lowered his hand. His claws retracted, but his eyes promised that this was not over. Jake picked up his jacket from where he had left it and put it back on. He straightened his tie and looked around the chamber. "Now," he said in a clear, strong voice, "let us talk about the subjugation accord, and let us talk as equals." The Senate chamber was no longer quiet. Voices filled the air as representatives from dozens of species talked excitedly among themselves. The sound was like a storm of different languages and strange noises. Emperor Vexthul stood at the far end of the chamber where Jake had carried him. His purple robes were wrinkled and torn. His scales had lost their shine. Most importantly, his confidence was gone. For the first time in his long life, he looked like what he really was, just another creature who could be defeated. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the chamber, exactly where the Emperor had been standing before. His hair was messy and his shirt was damp with sweat, but his eyes were bright with victory. Senator Kreval banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. "Please, please, we must have order in the chamber." Slowly, the noise died down, but the energy in the room had completely changed. Before Jake's demonstration, the chamber had felt heavy with the weight of the Emperor's power. Now it felt light and full of possibility. "The formal challenge has been completed," Senator Kreval announced. "Ambassador Morrison has successfully moved Emperor Vexthul from his position. According to the terms agreed upon, we will now discuss new terms for the proposed accord." Emperor Vexthul straightened his robes and tried to look dignified, but everyone in the chamber had seen him carried across the floor like luggage. That image would be impossible to forget. "This proves nothing," the Emperor shouted. "This was a trick, a deception. It was not a real test of strength." Jake looked at him calmly. "You set the terms, Your Imperial Majesty. You said I should try to move you. I moved you. The challenge is complete." A representative from the crystal being spoke up. Her voice sounded like singing bells. "The human used intelligence instead of force. This shows wisdom, not weakness." The insect representative clicked in agreement. "The Mantis Collective has watched humans for many years. They solve problems that others cannot solve. They find ways where others see no way." More voices joined in. Species that had been silent during the Emperor's speech were now speaking freely. "The humans helped us when the plague ships came," said a representative from the tree-like Woodland Alliance. "They risked their lives for us when no one else would help. Humans shared their medical technology with our species when we were dying from the red fever," added a representative from the Water-Breathing Aquatic Federation. "They asked for nothing in return." Emperor Vexthul looked around the chamber with growing alarm. The support he had counted on was disappearing before his eyes. "You are all fools," he roared. "This human performed a circus trick, it means nothing." But his words carried no weight now. The spell of fear that had kept other species quiet was broken. Senator Creval stood up. "I believe we need to reconsider the entire subjugation accord. Perhaps age and size are not the best ways to measure a species' worth." Jake stepped forward. "Senator Creval is right. But I want to say something to all of you before we continue." The chamber fell quiet again. Everyone wanted to hear what the human would say next. "I did not come here today to humiliate Emperor Vexthul," Jake said. "I came here to speak for my species, and for all species that are being told they are not good enough." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from different worlds. "The Emperor is not wrong about everything. Humans are young. We are new to space. We do make mistakes. We do not have the wisdom that comes from thousands of years of experience." Some of the representatives looked confused. Why was Jake agreeing with the Emperor? "But being young does not make us worthless," Jake continued. "Being new does not make us stupid. Making mistakes does not make us evil." He pointed to different sections of the chamber. "Every species in this room was young once. Every empire started small. Every civilization made mistakes when it was learning." Emperor Vexthul tried to interrupt. The Karathi Empire started 2 civil wars in its first 1,000 years, Jake said calmly. The Karathi destroyed 3 of their own planets before they learned to control their weapons. The Karathi were pirates and raiders before they became an empire. The Emperor's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Everything Jake had said was true, but these facts were supposed to be forgotten history. "How do you know this?" the Emperor demanded. Jake smiled. "Humans are very good at learning history. We study the past so we can understand the present." Lisa, Grant watched from the gallery with growing pride. Jake was not just defending humanity. He was rewriting the rules of galactic politics. Senator Creval spoke up. "Ambassador Morrison makes an excellent point. Perhaps we should judge species by their actions, not their age." "I propose a different kind of accord," Jake said. "An accord based on cooperation instead of domination. An accord where species help each other instead of ruling each other." The representative from the Crystal Beings rang like a bell. "The Crystal Collective supports this proposal." "The Woodland Alliance agrees," said the tree-like representative. "The Aquatic Federation also agrees," added the water breather. One by one, species around the chamber voiced their support. Even some of the older, more powerful species were nodding in agreement. Emperor Vexthul watched his empire's influence crumble before his eyes. "This is madness. Order requires hierarchy. Someone must rule." Jake looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Your Imperial Majesty, someone can lead without ruling. Someone can guide without dominating. Someone can be strong without making others weak." The Emperor had no answer for that. 3 months later, the new Galactic Cooperation Accord was signed by 187 species. The accord established that all species were equal members of the galactic community, regardless of age or size. The Karathi Empire was forced to release 15 species from tribute agreements. Emperor Vexthul lost half his territory and most of his power. But the story that spread fastest across the galaxy was not about political agreements or treaties. It was the story of the day a human dragged an emperor across the Senate floor. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero. But he always said that the real heroes were all the species who found the courage to speak up after seeing that even emperors could be moved. Lisa Grant wrote the official report of the Senate session, but her favorite part was a simple line at the end. "On this day, the galaxy learned that being small does not mean being weak, and being human means never giving up." The galaxy was never the same again.